I feel like there's nothing more marketable in the manga industry than a group or team, you know? The presentation can vary widely from the Ginyu Force to the Akatsuki. So many iconic outfits, poses and quotes have been birthed from these teams, crews and organizations. But what makes a great team? What leaves an impact on the viewer so that they'll never forget them? What leaves a bad taste in your mouth like spoiled milk, and what just makes you tear up? Well, that's what I'm here to talk about today, and with some heavy thought, I've come up with a few topics to discuss. Sacrifice, unity, chemistry, and camaraderie, or SUC for short. So let's go in reverse and talk about how camaraderie can really make a group. This scene from Black Clover serves as a really good example of what I mean when I say camaraderie. It's about the members of the group having each other's backs, being able to rely on each other without question or doubt. When Midorima takes shots without a ball in his hand, it's because he trusts his point guard enough to pass it to him. Hawkeye gave Mustang her father's fire alchemy as well as her life, because being comrades means giving everything and keeping nothing. This kind of relationship is so satisfying to watch that it's no surprise it shows up so often in anime. The characters being able to rely on each other without any doubt makes it easier for the viewer to invest emotionally in their relationship. You know that they have each other's back as much as they do, and it results in really great and consistent characters, especially when put into testing situations. On the other side of the coin, you have one of my favourite groups, the Espada, who are basically the opposite of everything I described. Not only do they fight all the time, they have literally killed each other at certain points. Now, while you might call this bad, I think it could be just as effective in its own way. The fact that the Espada are a completely dysfunctional family is established so well that it makes it just as enjoyable to watch as any other team. This isn't a one-sided coin. You can make an amazing fictional team without them all being ride or die for each other, especially when that attitude isn't earned at all. Though I haven't gotten around to watching Hunter x Hunter, I've heard it's almost the exact same situation with the Phantom Troop. In fact, you could argue that having all the members hate each other makes for a more interesting dynamic, seeing as it puts more focus on the motives outside of I will always follow this person because they are Nakama. It's more, I have to follow this person because I want X, Y, and Z. In the Espada, they are all just terrified of Aizen and do what he says in fear of death, which might not be particularly compelling, but it makes for a great narrative in a lot of the fights. An example of how this isn't done very well is in the Black Knights. None of the Black Knights really trust each other, but in a really sneaky way that undermines their righteous persona they have. They all basically have 2 or 3 people they trust, and outside of that group, there's always some scheme going on, which is never really used to make some grand point, but more as a way to introduce plot points to disrupt the story. Now we get to play the game, how did Team 7 fuck this up? On this occasion, Team 7 fucked it up by somehow replacing loyalty with simping. Sakura is not an equal to Sasuke, and he does not reciprocate her feelings in any way. The fact that she would let him kill her just because she's that wet for him doesn't make her brave, it makes her a simp, okay? And I hate to use that word, but it's fucking true. The exact same statement applies to Naruto. Naruto's love for Sasuke makes him look more like an abused dog who still clings to his owner's leg. And don't even talk to me about Naruto and Sakura's relationship, okay? Because that shit is hot garbage and practically non-existent outside of a few scenes out of hundreds. Now for the next letter of this acronym.
Captain! Captain! My turn! Me next!
Chemistry. Also, if you're wondering why I'm doing it backwards, it's because it's more impactful, trust me. Great chemistry in a team might not objectively be the most impactful or obvious aspect of said team, but it definitely just gives me the warmest feeling in my heart when I see a couple of besties burning it up. There's so many dynamics available, from mentor and student, to a couple of retards, to rivalries, to romances, whatever it is, some interesting dynamic or relationship between characters in a group can make it feel much more fleshed out and real, along with making the group much more enjoyable to watch anyway. One of the biggest complaints people have about modern day One Piece is the Straw Hats are never fucking together. We don't get stuff like Luffy doing impressions of the crew and Chopper telling Zoro off because they never hang out. The most fun parts of Stardust Crusaders were little windows into the Crusaders' life while traveling, like Kakyoin and Polnareff having a secret handshake, or Jotaro supposedly doing that weird cigarette trick for Joseph and Polnareff all the time. These kind of moments moments stay in the reader's memory much more than you think, and really cements these emotions you're ready to feel in the more dramatic scenes later on. When we look at a group like the Sea Fighters, you realize that the only thing making them believable is shit that happened like canonically 10 years ago. We basically never get any enjoyable interactions. The thing that really sucks is when we get it, it's fucking amazing. Like, God, I love Dragon Ball filler episodes so much. This gets even worse when we start talking about how the entire idea of needing a group broke down in the Cell Saga, because it basically just became the Super Saiyan show. But that's a whole fucking other thing. Anyway, it's time for our second round of how did Team 7 fuck this up? I feel like I don't really need to talk about how there was no chemistry between the Team 7 members. Like, it's actually kind of embarrassing. Especially considering how many great groups there are in Naruto. Okay, from OG Team 7 to the Akatsuki to fucking Team Asuma, okay? None of Team 70's personalities blend, yet we're still supposed to feel like there's some destiny team that only comes around once a generation, when in reality they're just a bunch of strangers who got put on the same group project. In case you haven't realised already, I really don't like Team 7 as a group, even if they do have their own individual merit. Now for the third aspect. Union. What I mean by union is essentially the motives of the characters and if they align. If they don't, does that add to a strength or weakness of the group? I use the Body Improvement Club for this, not only because I love them with all my heart, which I do, but because they're such a fine example of a group of people who all have the same goal and won't let any obstacles or prejudice get in the way. When Mob joined, they don't look down on him for being weak, because he's just another club member trying to get stronger. Instead, they just treat him with as much support as anyone else and even help gain his confidence due to that being their only real goal. You might call this linear and simplistic, but when it works, and it definitely works here. It's safe to say that for essentially every sports anime, the team's goal is going get better at X sport and win all their games, but for a specific example, in Kuroko no Basket, both Sonic and Knuckles want to defeat the Chaos Emeralds, but their reasons why show the difference in their characters, okay? Kagami is more concerned with his self-cerning strive to be the best compared to Kuroko's more righteous quest to prove the fucking true meaning of basketball, whatever he fucking wants. However, as the character gets closer, we see their motives kind of fuse, with Kuroko starting to focus on making himself better instead of just boosting others, and with Kagami eventually realizing that Kuroko wasn't just being a fucking nerd and actually had a point, which eventually led to him learning Ultra Instinct and defeating Trafalgar Ackerman. I should also mention groups whose purpose is simply, we need to save world from bad guy. Like, I'm sorry, but that's just really not gonna fly. And while it can work sometimes, mostly it just de-emphasizes the group aspect. It can work if they already have some set up hatred for each other and they're being forced to work together, like in Dragon Ball or Attack on Titan, but if I'm being honest, it's mostly done to death, so I guess I'll just leave it there. The best example of aligned motives off the top of my head would probably have to be the Straw Hats. Most of the Straw Hats have their own reasons to sail with Luffy, be it to be the best swordsman or to chart the entire world or just clout chasing. But the undeniable factor between every crew member is that they have complete, absolute faith in Luffy's dream, and he takes priority over whatever they want. Luffy becoming Pirate King is the reason they started to sail. Even if they've already had plenty of fun on the journey, it's still always going to be the mission by the end of the day. This allows for each character to have their own objectives, arcs and obstacles while still having that unified mission and adventure, and in my opinion is part of what makes the Straw Hats so universally loved. I think I should also mention groups who fall under the category of just vibing, that being those who are basically just hanging out, minding their own business until something comes to threaten them. A great example of this being the Duan Gang, who were literally just eating fucking spaghetti and meatballs by themselves before Kira killed Shigechi, which was a complete coincidence. Like a lot of the categories I've talked about, there's ways to get this right and wrong, and I think it's based mainly on tone. Diamond's Not Crash is basically a slice of life, where maximum vibes is the name of the game. Whereas, if the Akatsuki was suddenly like, you know what guys, let's just go to the fucking beach and vibe out for an episode, who fucking cares about tailed beasts or whatever, everyone would be like, what the fuck, what about this whole ass anime that's been happening? Also, yeah, Team 7 fucks this up, like, obviously, why do you even need me to say it? Like, let's finish this with... Sacrifice. The penultimate gesture of any team. If you get this right, can make the perfect moment. Something truly unforgettable. If you mess it up, you just look like you're trying to bait fucking tear ducts, aren't you? Zoro's sacrifice is arguably the most iconic moment in One Piece. He's the first ever crewmate of the Straw Hats, and he's fucking earned this moment by sticking with Luffy through thick and thin, no matter what. That's why when Sanji stands up, Zoro drops him like a side hoe, okay? Zoro is the motherfucking vice captain. You can't top that. He's been here since day!
He openly sacrifices not only his life, but also his dream of becoming the greatest swordsman.
Just because he believes in Luffy so much. His emotions are literally so powerful that it moves Kuma, a fucking robot. And he doesn't even tell Luffy the sacrifice he made, because that's not why he did it. He did it to serve Luffy, not himself, okay? Now let's compare that to Caesar's death, which should be more effective, right? I mean, Zoro didn't actually die, he just almost died, so, you know, Caesar's sacrifice should have been much more effective, right? No! Caesar's death scene sucks for a few reasons. One, it's straight up just unnecessary, okay? Thriller Bark sets the stakes. Either Zoro absorbs the pain bubble or Luffy dies. With fucking Jojo, I don't even know why he went in there, because, what, he had an argument with Joseph? What, he died in a temper tantrum? Like, what the fuck is this shit, Araki? Two, what did we even get out of it? Zoro's sacrifice literally is the reason One Piece is carrying on. Like, there's no One Piece without Luffy. Everything to do with the show is about Luffy. Like, he saved the main character's life. Caesar just got some fucking nose ring that Joseph didn't even use until he beat Wamuu, so it doesn't even matter that he got the ring in the first place. This kind of dumb shit happens in anime all the time. I just want to highlight one of the greatest moments in anime, compared with Nakama scenes are always going to be the most impactful by their very nature, so that outburst you just witnessed was kind of warranted. They're the climax of the entire relationship a group has built up. When Kisei completely pushes past his limits to play a few extra minutes for Kaijo, it hits hard because we've seen this team play many times and we understand the relationships they have. I don't fucking care when Neji dies because he never really talks to Naruto. Same with fucking Caesar, like, you've known each other for a month? Like, you're not that close, my guy. You really can't mess moments like this up. It's gonna take away all tension and investment in the team. Especially when it's some kind of cop-out and they just miraculously live. Like, I'm sorry, fuck you. When it all works out though, when the planets align, when everything goes right, it's unbeatable, you can't beat that. Anyway, I think I'm going to end this video here, since I've just basically started going on mad rumblings. I'd like to mention that I don't hate Naruto, I just think it's got a lot to criticize, you know. Maybe I'll make a video praising it one day. Probably not though, video's over.